The number of Canadians working in the gig economy is now being tracked by Statistics Canada, and it grows bigger every year. Here's a look by the numbers. The headline, 286,000 Canadians are working in ride or delivery app businesses the year ending in December. Of those, the majority are delivering food and other items, 207,000 people, while another 79,000 are working as drivers in ride-sharing apps. For 58,000 Canadians, this gig is their primary job. That's just 0.3% of the 19 million person working population of Canada. Almost half of those app workers are in just 3 cities: Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. The vast majority, or 73.1%, of driver or delivery gig workers are men, and more than half, or 55.7%, are landed immigrants. Another 141,000 Canadians do other types of online gig work, 58,000 of them producing videos, blogs, or podcasts, 42,000 of them as programmers or coders, and 41,000 as teachers or tutors online. In this case, the majority are women at 58.4% of the total. Gig work may benefit many with flexible, low-barrier jobs, but it can also be precarious work with few benefits. A year after the province of Ontario passed a bill setting a floor under labor standards for gig workers in that province, implementation has been slow. So are gig workers getting the protections they need? Jennifer Scott is president of Gig Workers United. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start right there. We know this is a growing category. Is there a sense that the floor is firm enough, that the pay and the benefits are where they need to be to protect gig workers?
I mean, there are no regulations that work in favor of gig workers in Ontario right now for gig work.
What do you mean by that? Obviously there's labor laws. Are they not protected enough? And would these new regulations in Ontario at least do enough to protect them?
No, so app employers misclassify workers by saying that we are independent contractors when we are really employees. And the new regulations that have been brought in under the Ford government are really the consequence of years of lobbying by app employers like Uber, who have found a friend in the Ford government, and they have given apps exactly what they've wanted. For example, engaged time, which means that people who deliver on apps or do rideshare are paid at least minimum wage only for part of the time that we are at work. Mm-hmm. On average, people who deliver on apps spend about 40% of our time at work, where it's unengaged time, so time where we would not be compensated for our work.
Yeah, this was a key point, right? The time waiting for a delivery, for instance, is uncompensated time, but obviously we need you to wait if we want the delivery. Do you expect that lobbying might change that in the future, or are we seeing kind of a hard line drawn where this is low-paid work? It's created an environment where we get things more cheaply, Jennifer, if we're honest about it. Is there an incentive on the part of a lot of people to keep the pay for gig workers low?
I mean, I think, here in Ontario, Saurabh Sharma, a member of Gig Workers United, brought an Employment Standards Act complaint to the Labor Board, which is exactly what any misclassified worker would do when something's not right at work, and they want the government or the Labor Board to intervene. And the board, or the officer investigating it, ruled in his favor just before the government brought in Bill 88 and regulations on gig work. The officer's ruling and the government's regulations are opposites. They don't mesh. The officer said that Uber Eats is an employer and that Saurabh was an employee. Mm-hmm. And so I think what we can do and what here in Ontario around gig work is move towards a future where government stands with gig workers who are organizing, who are saying we are misclassified and this misclassification needs to end.
And as you organize, and unions are kind of trying to get gig workers together, what kind of pushback do the workers find from the companies? Is there any kind of veiled threat to a gig employee that they won't get work if they try to organize?
One of the benefits that app employers have when workers are gig workers is that we work, really disparate, spread over a city. We don't have a workplace. The city is my workplace, and so it's tricky or difficult for employers to penalize workers. It doesn't mean that they don't, but unions protect workers, and workers being united together in collective action protects workers from employers' pushback.
Jennifer, so good to have you with us. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
Jennifer Scott is president of Gig Workers United. While gig workers may need protection, it can also be a type of labor that's extremely important to small businesses, and anything that makes it more costly could be bad for business. Dan Kelly is president and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Dan, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
So where would you place gig working in the scheme of things for businesses? How important is it that it exists?
Look, self-employment has always been a big thing for small business, both as business owners. Many are self-employed themselves, and there are lots of businesses of one. But then there are also many small businesses that hire people that are self-employed themselves to fill gaps, as they just don't have a full-time job to offer. The gig economy is somewhat new. It's often through these apps that exist. So it's a little bit of a different kettle of fish. But the principles behind self-employment and protecting that, I think, is pretty important. And governments sometimes are motivated to try to push everyone back into the traditional employer-employee relationship, and we feel that that's not the way to go.
One of the places, Dan, and this is true for small businesses, for startups, that we kind of see this gap is in benefits, is in retirement plans, things that the bigger the company, the more likely you are to have the safety net of those things. How important is it that government insists that they exist, although we'll agree that it will make life more expensive for the business, for its customers?
Yeah, look, there's lots of legislative thoughts about self-employment, gig economy. Should they be paying employment insurance, or should perhaps the app or the company at the end of this pay that on their behalf? There's also the saving for their retirement through the Canada Pension Plan. Right now, self-employed people are expected to put in a double dose. They have to pay the employer and the employee share. Governments do need to set, we did see some of the gaps during the pandemic. Obviously, many that are self-employed did not have a salary to rely upon, and then had to go on the CERB. But governments need to tread carefully. If we go too far, if we disenfranchise those that are self-employed looking to start up businesses, we could then end up cutting out some of the train that helps generate future small businesses and then large businesses from there. Self-employment is often step one on a journey to be an entrepreneur. We don't want to stop that.
Not a ton of time here, but we still hear about labor shortages for a lot of small businesses, especially in the service industry. Do you believe that that's bled over because workers have gone to the gig industry? In other words, they're self-employed through these apps and therefore not available in more traditional jobs?
I'm not sure that that's a big part of that. In fact, the trends seem to be the self-employed in Canada, certainly during the pandemic, is down as a group. And some of that has been moving into paid employment just because there have been more lucrative opportunities for them in paid jobs. And during the pandemic, many were motivated to do that for the comfort of a salary and benefits.
Dan, so good to have you with us. Appreciate your time today.
Anytime.
Dan Kelly is president and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. A plan to make housing more affordable could make the one you're in more expensive. That's still ahead. But first, you have to be pretty old to remember a time when Canada wasn't about to buy Lockheed Martin's F-35 fighter jets, or was about to not buy them, as government after government flip-flopped on the issue. Well, after almost 30 years, it seems we are buying them. Again, current price tag, $19 billion for 88 planes to replace our aging fleet of CF-18s. To be fair, a lot has changed in recent years, including a renewed commitment on Canada's part to its NATO allies that we spend on our military. Now, the only question is, will the politics fly? Back after this.